Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible force that's powering literally everything around you? The lights on in your room, the device you're watching this on, it all comes back to a surprisingly simple principle, a moving magnet. And the story of how we figured that out is absolutely incredible. It actually starts with a war. Yeah, you heard that right. Before we could have our modern electrical grid, there was this fierce battle of ideas, of brilliant inventions, and, let's be honest, of some pretty massive egos. A fight that would decide how power would get from a power plant to your front door. So when we talk about Nikola Tesla versus Thomas Edison, what was the real fight about? At its heart, it was a huge debate over the best way to generate and transport electricity. And their rivalry, well, it set the stage for understanding a discovery that changed the world. To get it, though, we first need to wrap our heads around a concept called magnetic flux. Okay, so before we can generate a single volt of electricity, we have to have a way to measure magnetism itself. And that's where magnetic flux comes in. It's kind of the first piece of the puzzle for everything that comes next. So what is it? Honestly, the simplest way to think about it is that magnetic flux is just a count. Imagine every magnet is shooting out these invisible lines of force. Flux is just the total number of those lines that are passing through a certain area, like a loop of wire.
And here's a great way to picture it. Think of a soldier's shield in a battle, like in the movie 300. The number of arrows sticking into that shield, that's your magnetic flux. If you've got a ton of arrows hitting it, you've got high flux. If you only have a few, you've got low flux. It's a perfect way to visualize something we can't even see.
And it turns out there are three key ingredients that decide what that number is. First, you've got B, the magnetic field strength. That's basically how powerful your magnet is, how many arrows are being fired. Second is A, the area of your surface. A bigger shield is going to catch more arrows, right? And finally, there's the angle, theta. If your shield is facing the arrows head-on, you catch the maximum number. But if you turn it sideways, parallel to the arrows, well, none of them are going to hit. All right, so we can count these invisible lines. Big deal, right? How does that get us electricity? Well, this is where the story gets really good. Let's bring in the scientist Michael Faraday, who ran one of the most important experiments in all of history. So what Faraday did was pretty simple. He took a coil of wire and hooked it up to a meter that can detect electric current. First, he just held a magnet near the coil, and nothing happened. The meter didn't budge. But then, he moved the magnet. The instant that magnet was in motion, pushing it in or pulling it out, bam! The needle on the meter jumped, and electric current was flowing.
This was the massive breakthrough. It wasn't just having a magnet nearby that mattered. It was the change in the magnetic flux. As the magnet got closer, the number of magnetic lines going through the coil went up. When he pulled it away, the number went down, and that change is what magically created electricity out of thin air.
Now, in the language of physics, this whole idea of the change in flux over a period of time is written like this, but don't let the symbols freak you out. All this really means is how fast the flux is changing. If you move the magnet slowly, you get a little bit of current, but if you move it really fast, you get a big current. And that idea is so important, it got its own law. Faraday's law of induction. The induced EMF is just a fancy term for the electrical force, or voltage. So all this law is saying is that the voltage you create is directly tied to how fast you change the magnetic flux. Faster change equals a bigger electrical push. Simple as that. But there's a fascinating twist to this story. You see, it turns out that nature is a little oppositional. When you create this current, it doesn't just flow in some random direction. Nope. It flows in a very specific way that actually seems to fight back against what you just did. So when you look at the full version of Faraday's formula, you'll see this mysterious little negative sign right there at the beginning. What in the world is that doing there? Well, that negative sign represents a really deep, fundamental truth about our universe, and it's all explained by something called Lenz's law. So here's the mind-bending part. The electric current you just created by moving the magnet, well, that current instantly generates its own brand new magnetic field. And the direction of this new field will always, without fail, oppose the very change you just made. It's like the universe doesn't really like change, so it pushes back. Check this out. If you take the north pole of your magnet and push it towards the coil's new current will instantly create its own north pole to repel your magnet to push it away. It's fighting you. But then, if you pull that north pole away from the coil, it flips. The coil becomes a south pole trying to pull your magnet back in. It is a constant cosmic tug of war. Now, this cosmic tug of war isn't just a neat little physics trick.
It is, and I mean this quite literally, how we power modern civilization. In fact, this is the very principle that finally settled that war over electricity we talked about at the beginning.
I promise you, you've seen this in action. You know that loud diesel generator humming away at an outdoor wedding or on a construction site? That machine is just Faraday's law in a box, built to apply this principle over and over and over again really, really fast.
So here's how it works. The diesel engine is just providing motion. Its only job is to spin a big coil of wire. That spinning coil is sitting right between some powerful magnets. So as it spins, what's constantly changing? Its angle to the magnetic field. Remember our ingredients for flux? A changing angle means a constantly changing flux. And what does a constantly changing flux give us? You got it, a continuous, steady electric current. We've turned simple motion into electricity. This is the heart of Tesla's vision, and it's all possible because of Faraday.
Okay, let's do a quick recap. First, magnetic flux is just our way of counting invisible magnetic field lines. Second, Faraday's law is the big secret. You have to change that count to create a current. Third, Lenz's law is the twist. That new current always fights back and opposes the change. And finally, you put all that together and you get a generator, the machine that turns motion into the electricity that powers our lives.
It's really an amazing thing to think about. This one fundamental, almost simple idea that moving a magnet creates power is the bedrock of our modern world. And it just makes you wonder, what other incredible, invisible forces are still out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for the next aha moment?